Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film My Man and I from 1952, and this is continuing my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. Ricardo Montalban, who plays Chucho Ramirez, who after working to help pick an asparagus crop, he decides to try to find more work before the next season starts and gets a job at a farm for a month where he'll make $90 for picking out dead stumps and helping them use their tractor and generally helping them with things around the farm. While he's there, he meets a woman, a wino, played by Shelley Winters. They first become friends, but slowly romance blooms. After his job, his 1 month is done with the farm, he leaves, but the check they give him is bad, and he keeps trying to get paid for his month of work, while at the same time he's falling in love with Shelley Winters. As he is a newfound American citizen, he even has a letter from the White House, which they probably send to everybody, but he has a lot of faith in it, and he has a lot of faith in America, in the system. And even though this guy is cheating him, and even though his girlfriend Shelley Winters isn't exactly a glass half full kind of personality, he still has a positive attitude towards everything, no matter what's going against him, as he tries to make it and get paid and trying to integrate into America. My Man and I is a lot like one of Wellman's kind of 30s assignment pictures. And that's pretty much what it was for Wellman. No one's sure why he really did it. Everyone kind of thinks it's mostly he was forced into it and MGM made him. It was kind of a sad thing that they made him. Not that I think this is a horrible movie or anything like that, but kind of mistreating him at this point because his film Battleground has let a whole regime change happen at MGM, and it was because of his film Battleground. And it seemed that other directors at the time would be able to get bigger pictures and pictures they wanted to do, and they weren't really treating Wellman's pictures that well. They didn't give a great release to Westward the Women. He just wasn't really being treated that well, and when they made him do kind of a film that's just there to fill out a bill at your local theater, he was kind of like incensed. But I kind of semi understand why they asked him to do it, because this seems like more of him going back to his assignment pictures of the 30s. He'd since really moved on. I mean, you look at films like A Star is Born, Battleground, Story of G.I. Joe, Oxbow Incident. There's far more of an auteur at work there, and there's a lot more production, and there's a lot more work going into it. My Man and I doesn't have that, but it's not really trying to have that either. It's a simpler, lower budget picture, and it's interesting to see Wellman go back to that, and I was kind of not sure how he was going to do that. The cinematography really isn't the same as it was in the 30s. He kind of tries to do the documentary style, not really as convincingly or as interestingly as he did before. The camera's very still, it's not moving around, he's not playing with the camera like he used to in the 30s. This film is so much like one of those assignment pictures, and I think when he did kind of rip from the headline stories or message pictures before, like Wild Boys the Road or Heroes for Sale or even Oxbow, there was kind of a flavor to the cinematography and the direction. He was really like trying to say something that might, even in Wild Boys, which is something that was really current at the time, he makes the themes very universal. And I don't think he did that as much in My Man and I. And, you know, it's more of a melodrama. I feel like a younger Wellman would have asked them to change a lot of stuff. Maybe they wouldn't even let him do that. The fact that MGM wanted to go into making assignment pictures at the time, this was obviously during the production code, and so you couldn't be as edgy as you were in the pre-code days. Why is it called My Man and I? Apparently some of the other titles were A Letter from the President and Shameless, and it's probably a little more descriptive. The whole romantic subplot doesn't really work as well, but it does say a lot about someone integrating into the United States as becoming a citizen, how tough it was at the time, especially like Ricardo Montalban's character, Chucho Ramirez, who's from Mexico and has become an American citizen, really cares about becoming a better person, is very positive and really believes in the system. And it kind of works with the normal Wellman protagonist, even Frankie Darro's character in Wild Boys the Road, where he's someone who really believes in his work and kind of believes in being everyday hard-working working man, basically. And I think, you know, in some ways, if an executive was like, oh, well, Wellman did so well doing those other kind of films, maybe he'll do really well with this, but it seemed like it more incensed him than that. He really didn't like doing these kind of pictures anymore. He didn't seem to have the same fervor to make, you know, a crappy B picture really pop as he used to. The 50s really weren't the 30s or the 40s. There was a different time, and I think a message picture then could be a lot more hokier and a lot more heavy-handed than it was in the 30s. Ricardo Montalban, who this is really a starring vehicle for, is actually fairly good. A lot better than this film demands. He has a real star presence about him. I really like his work with Wellman quite a bit. It's kind of a caricature. When you look at a lot of Ricardo Montalban's roles, they're not the greatest character. It's just like what he did with that character, and that shows like how good of an actor he really was. He wasn't as utilized as maybe he should have been in those days in Hollywood, but I think this shows like how good of a leading man he could really be. You know, you really want to follow him. When he's not on screen, the film doesn't feel as interesting, and it's mostly because of his portrayal. Shelley Winters is all right, an average like a Hollywood star playing a drunk kind of performance. I really wasn't as into it. This was actually shot by the same person who shot a film that Shelley Winters got an Oscar nomination for, which was the guy who shot Place in the Sun, William Mellor. And it's kind of interesting that I don't think this kind of cinematography works as well for a B production. It just seems to make it cheaper. When Wellman did the documentary style, it kind of gave it kind of a real feel about it. You kind of liked that it looked cheaper. It kind of made it feel grittier, more like you're really there and like you really got it. And this feels very distant. I think Wellman just wasn't really into going back. You know, he wanted to move forward. You know, Battleground was a big hit, and you know, he got an Oscar nomination and everything, and this is how MGM treated him. Soon after this, he signed with John Wayne's production company, and they made Island in the Sky. Apparently MGM was going to re-sign him and give him a big bonus. Wellman didn't like being tossed around by a studio, and he switched to various different studios, from you know, going from Warner Brothers to 20th Century Fox to MGM, and it seemed like MGM, his time there, he had a particularly bad time after a while. They just really didn't know how to treat him, and his relationship with John Wayne's production company worked out a lot better for him, especially since, you know, he was actually developing the script for Island in the Sky, and he planned to pitch it to MGM, but he just decided he couldn't do it anymore, and he went with John Wayne. MGM kind of screwed up on that one, especially because he kind of helped bring in the new regime and take down Louis B. Mayer with Battleground, and then they just screw him over after a while. It's probably better directed than a picture like this should be. I'm not against the politics of it. I actually kind of think Ricardo Montalban and Wellman tried to make it kind of work, but it just is a little too melodramatic, a little too long. There's too many subplots that don't exactly connect for a real theme to it. You have this thing with him and the farmer, and you have this relationship, and it's really more focused on the farming, the dispute over getting paid for this month of farming, than it is with him and Shelley Winters. So why exactly is it called My Man and I? Shouldn't it be called, like, you know, labor dispute? I don't know. That doesn't sound as cool, and I think the labor dispute thing said a lot more about integrating in the country and how he could be bossed around. Wellman, I think this is an interesting sidestep, and it's kind of odd that as much as we see directors now kind of try to go back and do what they used to do, this is Wellman really being forced to do that, and you can tell he really doesn't have the same fervor to really shine with an assignment picture. I think he just was really sick of it. He wanted to develop and make the kind of pictures he wanted to make, and he really was an auteur. He was a big director, and seeing other directors like George Cukor and Vincent Minnelli given breaks that he wasn't, I think he just had to leave. It's an interesting film of his later career just because it's going back to what he used to do. And, you know, I think a lot of times when an artist tries to go back and recapture that magic, it often doesn't work. But I think in Wellman's case, he didn't actually want to recapture that magic. He wanted absolutely nothing to do with making this kind of picture. So you can actually understand why it's not as good, because he just didn't want it to be. But I don't think he was the kind of guy who wanted to even do the documentary style anymore. So this kind of shows, like, me at least, where he was as a director at this point in time. Wellman, instead of holding back the melodrama like he did in Wild Boys, he just let the melodrama happen. And it's kind of sadder that you're seeing older Wild Bill Wellman just kind of go, well, whatever, they screwed me on this, they recut us across the wide Missouri, and I just don't care anymore, and I'm just going to get this done and finish out my contract. And that's certainly what he did. So if you have seen My Man and I and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. So the next film in my William Wellman series will be Across the Wide Missouri, and I hope to see you then, and thank you for watching.